A man at a dinner says a number out loud. Not a boast, not even a large number. He simply states what something cost him. Nothing visible happens. Nobody reacts. And yet the temperature of the table drops about 2 degrees, and he will not be invited back. Here is the cruel part. Nobody will ever explain what happened. There is no correction, no quiet word afterwards, no email. He will simply notice, over about 18 months, that certain invitations stop arriving, and he will attribute it to almost anything except the sentence. There is a behavioral code around money that is never written down and never taught. People who grow up near it absorb it the way they absorb an accent. People who arrive later break it repeatedly, learn nothing from the breaking, and conclude that the room simply did not like them. The first rule is the one he broke. Never state a specific figure about yourself. Not what you paid, not what you earn, not what anything is worth. The moment a number enters a conversation, everybody at the table begins doing arithmetic instead of listening. It is not modesty, and it is not superstition. A number is a fixed point, and once it exists, everybody has to locate themselves relative to it. Someone at the table is now above it, and someone is below it. The number did not describe you. It ranked everybody. The second rule is subtler, and it catches almost everybody. Never explain how you got it. Not the story about the early purchase, not the year the business turned, not the inheritance. Every origin story is a claim about deserving. And deserving is not a thing you get to assert. The reason is uncomfortable and accurate. Nobody's financial outcome is entirely earned, and everybody knows this about everybody else. An origin story invites the listener to privately audit your luck, and that audit is one you cannot win, because there is always a component you did not build. Third, in any group decision involving money, never be the person who mentions price first. Not the high number and not the low one. Whoever raises price sets the frame, and setting the frame in a mixed group forces somebody to reveal something about themselves. Watch what happens when somebody breaks it. A suggestion is made at a certain level, and now one person at the table has to either agree or announce a limitation. Most people agree, quietly, and resent it for a week. The person who suggested it has no idea any of this occurred. Fourth, when somebody guesses wrong about your situation, and they will, let it stand. Correcting a guess upward is a boast. Correcting it downward is a lie. There is no version of the correction that improves anything, so the entire category of correction gets abandoned. There is a detail inside Rule 4 that people miss. The wrong guess is almost always downward because the visible evidence has been deliberately removed. So the correction you are declining to make is nearly always a correction upward, which is precisely the version that would sound worse. Fifth, and this one is nearly invisible. Never convert a favor into an obligation in front of other people. The reference you made, the introduction you gave, the thing you covered. Mentioning it publicly transforms a gift into a debt, retroactively, and everybody present notices the transformation. Sixth follows directly. Generosity performed in front of witnesses is not generosity. It is positioning. And everybody can tell the difference immediately, even when they cannot articulate it. The version that counts happens where nobody is looking and is never mentioned afterwards by either party, which produces a reliable tell. Watch who mentions their own giving. The pattern is consistent enough to be useful. Discretion about money and discretion about generosity are the same instinct. And both of them come from the same source, which is not wanting anything to be owed. Seventh, do not compete on anything visible. Not cars, not watches, not renovations, not holidays. Visible competition is a game with unlimited stakes and no finish. And the only reliable way to not lose it is to decline to be a participant in the first place. The arithmetic is unforgiving. However much you have, somebody visible has more, and the comparison always runs upward. A man with 2 houses feels ordinary next to a man with 4. Visible competition converts every amount of money into the same feeling, which is not quite enough. Somebody once asked him directly what his watch was. It is an old silver one, inherited, worth very little and worn every day for 22 years. He said it was his grandfather's, which answered the question asked and none of the question underneath it. Eighth, never discuss a third person's finances, particularly in front of them, and particularly as a compliment. Saying that somebody did well on a sale is not a kindness. It is a disclosure made on their behalf, and they never consented to it. Ninth is the one, long-established money watches for above all others, how somebody treats service staff. Not politeness, which is easy to perform, whether they look at the person, use their name if it is offered, and notice them when there is no advantage in noticing them. There is a reason this is the most watched behavior in any room. Almost everything else can be bought or copied. A jacket can be bought, a vocabulary can be learned, a story can be rehearsed. How a person treats somebody with no leverage over them is the only signal that resists imitation. 10th, never propose a plan that forces somebody else to reveal a limit. Choosing the restaurant, suggesting the trip, setting the gift level. Whoever sets the level is deciding, on behalf of everybody present, what is comfortable, and they are usually the person least qualified to make that decision. 11th is a phrase rather than a behavior. Never say you cannot afford something when you mean you have chosen not to. The two are entirely different, and conflating them teaches everybody around you, especially children, that spending is a matter of capacity rather than decision. That distinction lands harder than anybody expects. A child who hears cannot learn that money is weather, arriving and leaving without any relationship to decisions. A child who hears we chose not to learns that spending is something a person does deliberately, which is the entire foundation. 12th and last, never let money be the most interesting thing about you. This is the rule underneath all the others. If your money is your subject, then every relationship you have is downstream of a number. And the number is genuinely the dullest fact in your possession. There is an unofficial 13th that most people follow without noticing. Never complain about a cost you could comfortably absorb. Grumbling about a parking fee when it is genuinely irrelevant to you reads as theater, and everybody present who cannot absorb it hears exactly that. So that is the code, and here is where most explanations of it stop. They present it as wisdom. Some of it genuinely is, but a set of unwritten rules that can only be learned by proximity is also a filter, and filters exist to keep certain people outside of certain rooms. Ask who these rules protect, and the answer is not neutral. They protect people who already have money from having to discuss it, defend it, or justify it. They also protect people from being asked for it. The discretion is genuinely useful, and it is not accidentally convenient. There is a real cost to a culture where money cannot be discussed. Salaries stay unspoken, so people are underpaid for years. Fees go unquestioned. Ordinary financial knowledge, the kind that would take 4 minutes to transmit, never crosses between people who like each other. Notice the tension. Rule 12 says money should not be the most interesting thing about you. Fair enough. But a room where money is never the subject is also a room where nobody learns anything about it. And the people who lose most from that are the ones who arrived last. So he keeps 11 of the 12 and deliberately breaks one. With 3 specific people, all younger, all asking, he talks about money in exact and useful detail, not his numbers. The mechanisms. What compounds, what does not, what a fee does across 30 years, the distinction does all the work. Telling somebody what you have is a status transaction. Telling somebody how something works is a transfer of capability. The first one ranks 2 people. The second one leaves the room with more capacity in it than it had before. He did not work this out alone. A woman he worked for in 2008 broke the same rule with him, in a car park, for about 9 minutes. She explained what a management fee actually costs across a working life. That 9 minutes is worth more than his degree. She used no numbers about herself. She drew a curve on the back of an envelope, marked 2 lines on it, and explained the gap between them. Then she said, "Do what you like with that," and went back inside. He has copied that exact approach for 18 years. Notice she kept Rule 1 and Rule 2 completely intact. He has no idea what she had or how she got it. and he never asked. She broke only the rule about money never being a subject, and she broke it in a car park where nobody else could hear. So there is a method to breaking the 12th rule without breaking the others. Never your figures. Always mechanisms. Only when somebody has actually asked. Never in front of a group. And never followed by any suggestion about what the person should now do with the information. That last one matters more than it sounds. The moment you tell somebody what to do with money, you have taken responsibility for an outcome you do not control and cannot see. Explaining a mechanism leaves the decision where it belongs, which is with the person who has to live inside it. So, return to the man who said, the number. He did nothing morally wrong. He broke a rule that nobody told him existed, in a room that enforces it without ever naming it. He paid a social price, with no way of discovering what he had been charged for. What should have happened is that somebody told him. Not at the table. 2 days later, quietly, in the way you would tell a friend they had spinach in their teeth. Nobody did, because doing so would itself have broken a rule. And that is the closed loop the whole code sits inside. So that is the one thing he does differently. Twice now, he has taken somebody aside and told them, gently and specifically, which rule they had broken and why the room went quiet. Both times it was awkward. Both times the person was grateful. Neither has broken it since. That is the part worth stating loudly, since the code itself never will. None of this is hereditary. It is observable, learnable, and transferable in a single conversation. The only reason it functions as a class marker is that the people who know it have agreed, silently, not to explain it. One more observation, from years of watching. The most reliable signals of long-established money are all subtractive. Fewer logos, fewer stories, fewer numbers, fewer opinions offered about other people's spending. Wealth announces itself, when it announces at all, by what is absent from the conversation, which creates a genuine problem for anybody trying to copy it. You cannot perform an absence convincingly for very long. Quietness that is a strategy has a slightly different texture from quietness that is a habit. And people who grew up inside the code detect the difference within about 2 conversations. So the only durable route is not imitation. It is deciding you genuinely do not want your money to be the interesting thing about you, and then living that way until it becomes ordinary. That takes years, and it is not a technique. It is closer to a preference you develop. His daughter is 19 and has asked twice. He gives her all 12 rules, plainly, in one conversation, and then he adds the 13th, which is the only one he made up himself. Know the rules well enough to break the right one on purpose for somebody who has asked. He gives her the whole thing at once because he had to assemble it over 18 years from breaking it repeatedly. That assembly cost him invitations, one friendship, and a great deal of low-grade confusion. And none of that cost purchased anything that could not have been said in an hour. None of this makes anybody wealthy, and it would be dishonest to imply otherwise. These rules govern how money is discussed, not how it is accumulated. Somebody who follows all 12 perfectly, with nothing in the bank, has excellent manners and exactly the same balance as before. They matter for a narrower reason. Money changes how people treat you, and these rules are the accumulated method for limiting that change. They do not build anything, they protect what has already been built, including the friendships, which are usually the thing most at risk. 2 years after the dinner, the man who said the number is at another table. Somebody asks what a renovation cost, and he says it was more than we planned, which is true, useless, and perfectly correct. Nobody notices anything, and that is exactly the point. The difference between that dinner and the first one is one 9-minute conversation in a hallway that somebody was willing to have. That is the entire intervention. No wealth changed hands, no advice was given, and one person simply explained a rule that nobody had ever explained to him. So here is the 13th rule, said out loud, which is itself a small violation. The code is not a secret worth keeping. Every person who explains it to somebody who arrived late is doing more for them than any amount of quiet generosity ever will. So think back. A room that went slightly quiet. An invitation that stopped arriving. A conversation that cooled for no reason you could identify. Somewhere in those 12 rules is the one you broke. And the reason you never found out is that nobody was willing to tell you. Who could you tell?